Rachel, is the camera recording or?
Rachel, do you want to say?
No one's gonna sit all set up.
Yismol Ravi, Adonai Rovi, Lo Echsa. Minote Sheyal Bitsein Yal Memenuchot Yanachaleini, Nafshi Yishoveh, Yanacheni V'Magle Tzedek L'Ma'an Shemo, Gam Ki Helech V'Gitzal Mavet, Lo Yirara Ki Ata Imati, Shiftecha U'Mishantecha Hema Yenachamoni, Ta'aroch Lefanai Shulchan Neged Tzurirai, Ishanta Vashamen Roshi Kosiri Vaya, Achto B'Chesed Yirdifuni Hoya Mechayai V'Shaveti B'Beit Adonai Le'orach Yamim. Friends, I've chanted for you the words of our 23rd Psalm. When we are having difficult days, when our hearts are breaking, we find the strength to turn to the words of the psalmist. And so I invite you to recite these words with me. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He guideth me in straight paths for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou hast anointed my head with oil. My cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. The mourners wear a ribbon. I ask you at this time to repeat after me. Baruch atah Adonai,
Baruch atah
Eloheinu melech haolam,
Eloheinu melech haolam,
Dayan
Dayan
ha'emet.
ha'emet.
We praise you, Adonai, our God, creator of the universe, the righteous judge. At this time, I invite you to now take the ribbon and tear it. In the rising of the sun and in its going down, we will remember him. In the blowing of the wind and in the chill of winter, we will remember him. And on days like this, when the buds open and we feel the rebirth of spring, we will remember him. In the blueness of sky and in the warmth of summer, we will remember him. In the rustling of leaves and in the beauty of autumn, we will remember him. In the beginning of the year and when it ends, we will remember him. When we are weary and in need of strength, we will remember him. And when we are lost and sick at heart, we will remember him. When we have joys we yearn to share, we will remember him. So long as we live, he too will live, for he is now a part of us, as we remember Irwin Myeroff. To you, Rose, and to your children, to Adrian and Shell, and also to Jay and Adria. To his sister-in-law Adrian and his brother-in-law Richard, and to his grandchildren Daniel, Allison, Rachel, Chad, Brian, Jeremy, and also to Amy, Nick, Ephraim, Andrea, Lisa, and Elise, and to Stacy and Adrian and Ryan and Gina, and to his beautiful great-grandchildren, to Naomi and Gregory, Aspen and Lila, Noah and Madison, Jackson, Caden, Paxton, Brandon, and Ashley, to all the members of the family, to so many dear, cherished friends, those who are able to be here with us in person, and to so many of you who are joining us via technology because of the circumstances that we are living with. You're not able to be with us in person. We still know you are with us. We feel you. We feel your presence as today our hearts unite as we remember and celebrate the life of your beloved Ernie. Our sages have taught us that birth is a beginning and death a destination, and life is a journey from childhood to maturity and from youth to age, from innocence to awareness and ignorance to knowing, from foolishness to discretion and then perhaps to wisdom, from weakness to strength, or strength to weakness and often back again, from health to sickness, and back we pray to health again, from offense to forgiveness, from loneliness to love, from joy to gratitude, from pain to compassion and grief to understanding, from fear to faith, from defeat to defeat to defeat, until looking backward or ahead we see that victory lies not at some high place along the way, but in having made the journey, stage by stage, a sacred pilgrimage. Birth is a beginning and death a destination, and life is a journey, a sacred pilgrimage to life everlasting. Ernie's journey of nearly 90 years began here in Cleveland. He was born on May 25th, 1931, to Harry and Fanny Myeroff. Ernie was the eldest of the 4 Myeroff children, and together with his siblings, Judy, David, and Jack, all of blessed memory, they grew up in Cleveland in the Lakeview neighborhood. The Myeroff family made their way through some of the most challenging times in our nation's history. Ernie's father worked diligently in the roofing and furnace business. He had a crew of workers installing under his watchful eye, and thankfully the family fared well during these difficult times. Ernie's mother was a homemaker, but when her children were a little bit older, she worked at the May Company in the drapery department. Attending East Tech High School, Ernie was always fascinated with mechanics. And in his high school years, he played the clarinet in a dance band. And he also spent a lot of time working alongside his dad in the family business. Now it was October of Ernie's senior year of high school. He met Rose Brown at a Halloween party. Rose, you and Ern, as you like to call him, you and Ern were immediately smitten, taken with each other. Your first date, you remember clearly, it was at the old Euclid Beach Park in their dance hall. And you and Ern danced the night away. And the two of you have been dancing ever since, for 70 years, dancing through your life's journey. You and Ernie were married just 3 months after that first date, and your wedding occurred on August 13th, 1950, in Ernie's parents' backyard, a beautiful garden wedding with Rabbi Eisenberg officiating. Rose, all those years ago, as you and Ernie stood beneath a chuppah and shared your wedding vows, as you stood there on that wedding day and you prepared to drink from the second cup of wine, there's this moment in the ceremony where we recite what's called the Sheva Brachot, the 7 wedding blessings. And as the rabbis recite these words, or the cantors chant these words, it's not until about the 6th blessing of the 7 that we even mention the bride and groom. And the words we use to pay tribute to the bride and to the groom, the words we use are Re'im Ahuvim. Two Hebrew words, Re'im Ahuvim, which means loving partners. And this is what you and Ernie shared, a partnership. These words and this phrase, these are very true of you and Ernie. In your life's journey together, Rose, you and Ernie, you built a life, you built a family, and looking around and reading all the names of not just Kenahora, the grandchildren, but the great-grandchildren, you not just built a life and a family, you built a legacy. As Adrian and Sheldon entered into your world, this beautiful Myeroff portrait, this family portrait, began to grow all the more beautiful and complete. You made your first home together with the children in Willowick before finally settling in University Heights on Groveland Road. You and Ernie had a wonderful group of friends, and there was your couples club, and you loved to attend the theater. And as the two of you were partners in life, I am told that on the dance floor you were the most elegant of partners. From that very first date at the Euclid Beach Ballroom, the two of you on the dance floor were quite a sight to behold. You even took ballroom dance classes and were especially good at dancing, let's say, the cha-cha, any of those Latin dances. And of course, there were the many boating excursions and adventures that your whole family loved and enjoyed on that family boat. And Rose, when you and Ern were yearning to be, let's say, on a bigger boat, together, the two of you traveled and you managed to enjoy 35 cruises throughout the Caribbean and to Hawaii. Rose, in describing your beloved Ern, you used these words so that I would have a better idea of the man and his character. You said he was romantic and sentimental and funny. You said he loved to shower you with surprises and gifts, and your children jumped right in at that moment and described how spoiled you were. He loved to spoil you, and I'm so happy he did. Rose, you and your husband gave a great gift to your children and your grandchildren. Because in those 70 years that the two of you spent as husband and wife, you set before them quite an example. The example of Re'im Ahuvim, of loving partners. This is a gift that you and Ernie have given to your children, your grandchildren, and even to the next generation, your great-grandchildren. Ernie devoted himself, dedicated himself to his family and to his dearest friends, but he also dedicated himself to fulfilling the mitzvah of Tikkun Olam. Now, Tikkun Olam, in case you're not sure, are two beautiful Hebrew words, which mean repairing the world. We know that not one person can repair this very broken world, but all of us are required to do our part, and Ernie certainly did his part. He spent many years devoting time and energy to the Big Brothers program. Rose, you and Ern, you would take these boys on special outings, and you took them to the circus, and in your own special way, the two of you were able to have a very positive impact on so many young lives. Ernie also volunteered at Menorah Park as a cashier in the snack shop known as Pearl's Place. And while Ernie was working on one side of the wall at Pearl's Place, Rose, you were on the other side of that wall, volunteering in the gift shop at Menorah Park. Ernie continued his work at Menorah Park up until the very beginning of this pandemic. He also worked in business for B&O Management. He did this for many, many years. But somewhere in his 40s, he and a business partner, Harold Cohn, they established a roofing company known as County Construction. Ernie ran the business until the time of his retirement. But Rose, it seems to me that your beloved had a little trouble understanding the definition of the word retirement, because he just couldn't sit. He couldn't sit still for a moment. And so, with his mechanical skills, he ended up getting a part-time job at Oric, repairing vacuums. And the folks at Oric must have really loved him, because they kept begging him to have more hours, to take on more. And Ernie, with his wit and his humor, during his time working at Oric, if anybody should ask him, "How was your day today? How was work?" he would say without missing a beat, "It sucked." It's a vacuum joke, but a good one. In a moment, we're going to hear from his children, but a couple things from his other children. Adria shared with me that her father-in-law really loved making people happy, and he loved to surprise people. Adria, you described him as a giver and somebody who was generous with his time and his energy. And Adria, you have some gratitude because you remember in raising 4 kids, a beautiful thing, but sometimes a bit overwhelming. You recall how grateful you were that on Saturdays, Grandma and Zadie would take 1, 2, sometimes even 3 and 4 kids for an outing. It was great for the kids to have that special Grandma Zadie time, but it was a blessing for Adria and Shell to be able to catch their breaths for just one moment each Saturday. And Jay, you entered into this large and loving family just about 20 years ago. And you said that from the very beginning, Ernie was warm and welcoming to you. And you soon discovered that you and Ernie had a shared passion. This was for the game of golf. That very first visit when he and Rose came to visit you and Adrian in California, you went out golfing. And Ernie especially loved playing golf with you, but also with his favorite foursome, which included you, Adrian, and Shell. Or Adria.
No.
Adrienne and Shell. I knew I would make one mistake with the Adrians and the Adria. As I mentioned a moment ago, we're going to hear from Adrian and Shell. But I want to mention that for the two of you, not only could you rely on your dad for everything in your earliest years, but you could rely on him all of your years. And so what a more special and beautiful turn of events when he could turn to the two of you and rely on you. And whether it was medical advice or just seeking good counsel and making important decisions, he found in the two of you. He found a loving ear, a loving heart, and good listeners when he had something meaningful he wanted to share. And so with that being said, I remind everyone of an expression that our tradition teaches us, and that is that words which come from the heart enter directly to the heart. I know the two of you have words in your heart that you want to share with all of us. So first I'm going to call on his daughter, Adrian.
The events of the last couple of months have been challenging for our family. And certainly for my father, whose health declined rapidly during that time. I try to keep things in perspective. Ernie lived almost 90 years, making the last couple of months a very small fraction of a life that he himself described as great. I have many wonderful memories of my father. In my elementary school years, we were a boating family. Countless times spent on Lake Erie, where we went for evening and weekend rides. Water skied, played in the water for hours on end. There was plenty of rough and tumble water play with Sheldon and me, which we so much enjoyed. We had camping vacations, several of which were shared with Uncle David and Aunt Adrian and their family. I can remember climbing up a tall ladder to a platform that seems many stories high and hanging onto a rope to fly across a lake, my dad encouraging the adventure, though I was completely terrified. I wasn't going to let him do it without me, though. Remember that, Aunt Maybe? In high school, I was in the Glee Club. My parents came to many performances. I think Dad was bored out of his mind, but he did it, and he always told me how proud he was of me. Dad was a role model for being a handyman. The guy could fix anything, My brother Sheldon had the sense to learn this from him. I, on the other hand, didn't pay attention, and I'm useless when anything around the house needs to be fixed. But I did learn from Dad to be independent, assertive, and to go after my dreams. Thank you, Dad, for that. I had always, from as early as I can remember, wanted to be a nurse. My parents were of middle-class means, but Mom and Dad together made sure to support me to realize that dream. They beamed with pride as I graduated, passed my boards, and later completed a master's degree in nursing. Dad and Mom did not have their own opportunity for a higher education, but took pride in the fact that Sheldon and I would be the first in the next generation of Myeroffs to accomplish such goals. I never lived in Cleveland again after completing college, but Dad made certain that wherever life took me, he and Mom would visit and spend time with my family. There were countless visits to me in college, then to California, Cincinnati, Indianapolis, and back to California again. We had some great family visits, including a Highway 1 road trip and a Tahoe trip. Remember that, Mom? Life dealt me a blow when I lost my first husband, Ken, when he was 51 years old. My father and mother were beyond supportive through that tough episode. As I healed and eventually met Jay, my parents accepted him with open arms. I am so grateful for that. Every phone conversation with my father included this question: how is Jay? Dad was a wonderful father-in-law to Jay, and we have so appreciated that relationship. And Jay played golf. And then, so did I. Dad loved golf, and it meant so much to him to play with Sheldon, then with Jay and me. We really had some fun times playing all together. I know it meant a lot to Dad. As our families grew, Dad and Mom were supportive and involved, loving every minute spent with the grandchildren. Several years ago, our family had a wonderful opportunity to have a family reunion in Vail, Colorado. What a fun experience that was. Grandparents, parents, grandchildren, and the first of the great-grandchildren gathered and played. Dad was no longer playing golf, but rode with us and enjoyed the scenery and the experience of seeing his offspring play golf together. In more recent years, as the family grew to include 10 great-grandchildren, the joy grew even more. Dad was crazy about all these little ones, and both Mom and Dad talked endlessly about every opportunity they had with them. Dad and Mom cared very much about 2 bonus great-grandchildren from Jay's 2 children. Photos of all these little ones are on display all over the apartment. There's so much to say about Dad's life with my mother. What a life they had. Dad pampered my mother. They danced. Boy, could they dance. Everyone in the room paid attention when my parents danced. I wish I had inherited that dance gene from them. They went on countless cruises and always had fun. I can't even begin to count how many times they cruised the Caribbean. I used to ask them, why are they going to the Caribbean again? They didn't care how many times they were seeing the same islands. It was all fun to them. Dad showered Mom with jewelry, clothes, and lots of attention. He took great care of Mom. Sheldon and I promised to take good care of her too, in Dad's absence. I made that promise to Dad last Friday during his final hours. Ernie had the best sense of humor. Teasing and joking were part of his persona. I think he got that from his own father. Sheldon and I were lucky to get that sense of humor from Dad. Several months ago, despite his pleas not to do so, we took away Dad's car due to his physical limitations. A few days after Sheldon gave Dad the money from the sale of the car, Dad called me to tell me what he was going to do with that money. He was going to buy a new car. Funny, Dad. And even more recently, in fact 2 days after Dad was transferred to hospice care, he apologized to Jay that he would not be able to caddy for Jay that day. I only saw my father cry 3 times in my life. The first was the day I married Ken, when Dad first saw me in my wedding dress. The second was when he arrived in California to meet his first grandchild, Daniel. He walked into our home, I put newborn Daniel into his arms, and the tears of joy came. And the third time, just about 2 weeks ago, my mother and I got the first opportunity for a compassionate visit at Myeroff Park. We were escorted to his room, and as he was sitting in a wheelchair, he saw us in the hallway, and the tears welled up in all of us. There were hugs and smiles. I will never forget that day, and that opportunity to visit with Dad while he still had the ability to enjoy it with us. I give my father great credit for the courageous decision he made less than 2 weeks ago, a decision to not move forward with any more efforts to prolong his life. He wanted to leave quickly and peacefully. With the efforts of his loving family and the hospice staff at Myeroff Park, his wish was achieved. I am at peace because he is at peace. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Adrian. I'd like to now call on his son, Sheldon.
Knowing my sister the way I do, I knew that my speech would be a tough act to follow.
I got to go first.
I know, and I knew you were going to cover a lot more than I was because you're better at this. But Mom and Dad didn't like you better.
They did. They actually did.
So I'm going to make mine short, which is very good for all of you. So I was getting ready to do this little eulogy, and I decided to look up the definition of father in the dictionary, and I saw Ernie's picture. He was all a father could be. He was always there to help me over all the years, doing wonderful things for me. Like one day I saw him pulling a car up in our driveway that I didn't know where this car came from or why it was there, and he says, "It's yours, Shell. Take it apart. Have fun." And then later on he would say to me, "If there's any extra parts, just put them in the glove compartment." He was always present for me as a kid. He took me wherever he went, and I remember the endless hours driving in the car with him, smoking cigars and me gagging. He taught me a lot of things over the years. He taught me golfing, boating, working with my hands, which is one of the greatest things. He helped me find the creative genius in me. We went on these beautiful fishing trips with relatives. We had a ball, worked on cars, and he did a lot more. He really inspired me in a lot of different ways. He showed me by example how to raise kids and be in a marriage and be a responsible human being. He didn't have to talk about it. He just did it. He was always trying to help other people and was loved by all. I don't know anybody that didn't like him. But one of my favorite things was his workers from his roofing company used to call up, and I'd pick up the phone and say, "Hello?" And they would respectfully ask for Mr. Ernie. As a result, I called him Mr. Ernie for years. I would always say, "What's up, Mr. Ernie?" In conclusion, let's pay tribute to a life well lived. Great husband, great father, great grandfather, great friend. And I would like you all to join me in saying goodbye to Mr. Ernie. On the count of 3. Goodbye, Mr. Ernie. See, she was always the perfectionist, Ernie was. I'm sorry that happened.
Thank you, Sheldon. We have one more member of the family who wants to share some words with you, and I'm very pleased in this sad moment to call on his grandson Jeremy, who has words and memories from his own heart, but also represents the grandchildren of Ernie.
Ernie Myeroff, our Zadie, was a great man. Much more than a grandfather, he, along with his partner in crime, Grandma Rose, shaped the childhood of his grandkids for the better. When Daniel, Allison, Rachel, Chad, Brian, and myself got together to reflect on his legacy, we couldn't believe how the vast library of cheerful memories was unlocked so quickly. Over the past few days, we reminisced and remembered all the many ways Zadie made us feel so loved. I could speak today for hours about each special moment that shaped our lives, and that fact in itself speaks volumes to the kind of grandfather that he was to us. When we reflect on the key characteristics that Zadie made Zadie so unequivocally Zadie, there are a few common threads that came to mind that we'd like to share with you today. First and foremost, Zadie was friendly, playful, and lighthearted. He went out of his way to bring an ear-to-ear smile to your face. A jokester, magician, and an entertainer, we can never forget laughing hysterically at his jokes that we didn't even know were jokes until the punchline. Daniel remembers his uncanny ability to stick a dad joke into any conversation. One thing you couldn't miss is his beep beep or woo when he popped in, at times unannounced, with a ginormous Costco pizza in his hand. From Patterson's to Chagrin Falls to the Maple Festival, every single weekend was an adventure. I mean, every single weekend. Always a joker, Rachel distinctly remembers a jaw-dropping magic trick where Zadie gave us the power to control the timing of when traffic lights changed. He'd simply tell us when to count down from 3, and boom, you got yourself a green light. Did we ever figure out how he did that? We're still guessing to this day.
So sweet.
He was also as kind and giving as he was funny. Zadie wanted nothing more than for his family and grandkids to have the world. Allison remembers that there was rarely a time when Zadie showed up without a special gift in his hand to make you feel like the most special kid in the world. Now, where he got the gift, you may never know. What I do know is when you're around him, Zadie loved what you loved. He turned Chad's love of everything Army into a trip to the Army surplus store. Brian and I loved trains, so he took us to the train museum, on train rides, Cleveland's own Rapid, and of course, gave us hours of fun with a full-scale train model in his basement. Rachel loved music and skating, so he took her to every single concert and skating event in Cleveland. Zadie never failed to make us feel important and loved through these special trips. Speaking of trips, Grandma Rose and Zadie loved to take us on them in every way, shape, or form. Trips on the boat, accompanied by water ski lessons and cookouts at the dock. Frequent trips to theme parks like Cedar Point and Disney World. And yeah, they had the patience to take us to Disney World. 4 grandkids. Trips to Indianapolis to the Hirsch family home to hang out, reconnect, and spend time with the Children's Museum and playing with puppies. They even managed to take us on a cruise to Mexico, one of 35-plus glorious cruises they took over the years. Brian remembers a special trip they took him on to Toronto. Just before leaving, Zadie gave a 10-year-old at the time, Brian, a life-size robot to build from the ground up that he'd been eyeing for months. While Graham and Zadie saw a show, Brian declined his invitation, sat in his room, and built a lifestyle robot to completion instead. We also remember Zadie for his passion and artistry. He was a sharp dresser, an incredible dancer, a creative mind at heart. Zadie was on a mission to bedazzle the city of Cleveland. Anything you could possibly put a rhinestone on, he would find a way to do it. I'm talking sweatshirts, jean jackets, hats, everything in between. Zadie had a full-scale assembly line for this work, and didn't do it half effort either. He got creative and turned out a quality bedazzle every single time. He also loved going to the theater, shows, and museums. But we couldn't forget his art of the bargain hunt. We would come to Ernie in search of any item we needed to purchase, and he'd find the best deal in town. Heck, sometimes he'd even buy it for you. Nobody finds a better deal than Ernie. When we look back at Zadie's life holistically, beyond the trips and jokes, every one of us will remember Zadie as a good man with a big heart. Allison can never forget the scratch of Zadie's beard after a big hug when he walked through the front door. He created a legacy that any one of us could only hope to match, and he'll forever be remembered for his love, creativity, and kindness. Zadie was the best grandfather we could have ever asked for, and a model for generations to come.
Nice. Very nice.
Very good. This is going good. Something right.
That was beautiful. So as we prepare for the rites of burial, here we are today, in a moment of memory, but also an opportunity of looking forward. In remembering Ernie, we think about his parents, we think about his siblings, his son-in-law Ken, his great-grandchild Miles. We think about them, but we also gain strength and hope as we look around in this beautiful, peaceful spot, as we know who joins us via technology. And again, we go back to that word, legacy. Legacy. One of his great-granddaughters is here with us today, and little Lila represents the future of this family and the continuation of this legacy. Friends, we're now going to prepare for burial, so I ask you to wait with us for just one moment as we continue.
Katie, that was really nice.
And Jeremy. Hi, Daddy. Hi, Mister. We all love you.
move forward with our concluding prayers, I would like to just share with everyone here that if anyone is wishing to make a contribution in memory of Ernie, the family has suggested that you might consider the Myeroff Park Hospice, the place that showed so much care and great compassion to Ernie and the family in his last days. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam dayan ha'emet. Praised are you, Adonai, our God, creator of the universe, the righteous judge. Adonai natan va'Adonai lakach, yehi shem Adonai mevarach. God has given, and now God has seen fit to take away. Still, we bless the name of God. Vayashov hafar al haaretz k'shahaya v'haruach tashuv el ha'elohim asher natana. The dust returns to the earth as it was, but the soul returns unto God who gave it. May the soul of Irwin Myeroff be bound up in the bond of life eternal. Tradition has taught us that when we come into this world, there are loving hands to guide us and to show us the way. And it's true that when we exit from this world, it should not be done in the hands of strangers, but of course in the hands of those who knew us and who loved us. At this time, I would like to invite any members of the family who wish to place earth on the casket to please come forward and do so. Friends, if you are able, I invite you to rise for El Malay Rachamim. El Malay Rachamim, Shochen Bamramim, Amsemen Ochanachana Tacha Kanfecha Shlina, Bemalot Kedoshim Utorim Kezohar Arakia Mashirim. Et nishmat Yitzchak ben Heri Befani, shehalach leholamo began Eden bechemenuchato. Ahna baharachamim astireichu beseter knafech leolamim, betitror bitrarachayim et nishmato, Adonai v'nechalato, v'yanoach b'shalom. al mishkavo v'nomar amen. O merciful God, who dwells on high, who is full of compassion, grant perfect rest beneath the shelter of your divine presence among the holy and pure, who shine as the firmament. To our dear departed Ernie, who has gone to his eternal home, may his soul be bound up in the bonds of eternal life, and grant that his memory inspire all of us to noble and consecrated living. And to this we say, Amen. We now turn to the words of our Kaddish, and we say together, Yitzvadal v'yitzvadash shmei rabba, v'alma divrach yirutei v'yamlich malchutei, v'chayechom u'vyomechom u'v'chayei dechol beit Israel, ba'agala u'bizman karim v'yamru amen. Yehei shmei rabba mivarach le'olam olamei omayah. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitfa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shmei v'kudusha v'richu le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechamata damiran v'yalma v'yimru amen. Yehei shlom araba min shemaya v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'yimru amen. Osei shalom bimromam, huya osei shalom, aleinu v'al kol Yisrael, v'yamru, amen. We pray that God, who makes peace in a high place, will send peace and comfort to you, the mourners, to Israel, and to all humankind. Friends, this concludes our service for today. For those of you who were able to join us in person and those who joined us from afar, as you've come here today in peace, so may you go forth in peace.